Hey, how's it going, everybody? So in this video, I want to show you guys some of the testing that I've been doing and share with you guys some of the interesting results I've been finding. Now, what I've been testing is essentially which dinosaurs are best for a certain amount of space based on rating. So this test isn't going to be based on necessarily the amount of money it costs per dinosaur, because most of the time money isn't an issue. What you're typically going to find in this game is that you're going to run out of space at the end of your park build right before you hit 5 stars. So let me show you how I set up this test. So what I did was I made a lagoon that was 5 in this particular shape, and then I went around and I traced the outline with the fence. Now, the reason why I did this, originally what I set out to test was whether or not the aquatic dinosaurs were even worth it. And so I found that this is the minimum that you need to make a mosasaur. So I was wanting to test the mosasaur and see just how worth the mosasaur actually was compared to other land dinosaurs in the same amount of space. So I started making the enclosure like this so that way I could test against a mosasaur what the land dinosaurs were going to end up being like. So each enclosure might be like ever so slightly different. It's hard to trace this perfectly, but it's going to be close enough that it's really not going to matter. And you're going to see when I actually get into the results that there is a drastic difference between some of the species. You may be surprised which dinosaurs I actually find are the most worth it. So jumping in here to my testing area, one of the things I wanted to do was have like a control enclosure, one that was just kind of like a baseline enclosure that we could kind of base everything off of. So I built this enclosure right here, and I filled it with 3 Spinosaurus. That's how many I was able to get in here, barely. I mean, their needs aren't quite met. This enclosure is 5 fences long by 5 fences wide, so it's a perfect square. And you can see we ended up getting 3,852 rating total between those 3 Spinosaurus. But you can see here that the rest of these enclosures are actually a decent amount smaller than that 5x5. So what I've done is I've labeled each viewing gallery based on the total appeal of the dinosaurs. So let's jump into our first one, which would be our worst dinosaur to use that I've found so far, is the Velociraptor, which might be a surprise to people. I know this is one of the favorites, but you can see I'm actually even giving this one a little bit of a bonus here, because really its needs aren't met. So realistically, I should take a couple out, but I'm trying to give this every advantage you can get, and it's still just not quite working. You can see under population, we have 13 of them in here at 185 appeal a piece, and even with all of that, we're still only at 2,405 appeal total for the entire enclosure. And you're going to see that that appeal is nothing compared to some of these other enclosures. So as I've been sitting here making this video, I realized that some people might be interested in learning more about like which dinosaurs are worth it money-wise rather than space-wise. Because there are a few situations on a couple different maps where you are going to have to worry about money a little bit more. Usually you don't have to, but there are a couple situations where, money is a little bit more of a concern. So I'll make a separate video discussing these same dinosaurs in the same setup and discussing which ones are more worth it money-wise. But in this particular video, we're just going to continue talking about these particular dinosaurs and what the space requirements are, because I personally have ran into more issues running out of space than I have running out of money. So now going forward, this is more of our control dinosaur here, because this is the original dinosaur that I was wanting to test whether or not the space was actually worth it. This one here is the mosasaur. So this is a perfect size enclosure for a mosasaur. This is what you're going to need. You're going to need 5 lagoon sections. And it's going to give you a total rating of 2,500. So as we move on here, you'll see that that 2,500 rating is actually really not that great for the space. So our next enclosure here, just a little bit more than the mosasaur at 2,532, is actually the T-Rex, which I'm kind of sad about this. I hate rating the T-Rex this low because the T-Rex is one of my favorite dinosaurs, if not my favorite dinosaur. But the sad reality here is that I actually can't even realistically put 2 T-Rexes in here. As you can see, they're just not even remotely close to having enough space. Yeah, technically they're comfortable, but I mean, this is gonna have you running into all sorts of issues. They're gonna get sick from not having enough space, because that is a thing. And if a storm happens, they're immediately gonna get angry. So realistically, unfortunately, the Rexes are just not worth it space-wise. And I've noticed too, in separate testing, that getting more than 2 Rexes in an enclosure is a really tough task, because their space requirement actually jumps exponentially from 2 to 3. So next up on our list, at slightly better appeal than the Rex, is actually at 3,015 total appeal, the cryolophosaurus. So you can fit 9 of these total in this enclosure here. For, like I said, a total of 3,015 appeal. Now, the thing about this, at 335 appeal apiece, that's not a ton of appeal. You can only get 9 in here, so it's in this weird space where it's 3,000 appeal, so that's a decent amount of appeal, better than a Rex for that amount of space. But I know said I wasn't going to talk about money in this one, but I feel like it's worth mentioning because I don't want to steer you guys wrong here. The cryolophosaurus per rating is actually one of the more expensive dinosaurs in this game. In fact, it's actually over twice the amount per rating as a Rex. So I actually would recommend steering clear of this dinosaur, in all honesty. So the next one on our list is actually tied with our Spino enclosure that we have as like a control at 3,852 total appeal. Our next dinosaur on our list is the Megalosaurus. So this is another good one to have in the park. You'll see here, I actually realize the forest is a bit low here, so I go ahead and just to make sure that this is fair, I give it just enough to be at 100%. So there we go. All of their needs are met. We have a total of 6 of them in here, and that's a fairly good appeal. I would definitely start considering all the rest of the dinosaurs on this list here as dinosaurs you should definitely be shooting for. So the Megalosaurus is definitely a highly recommended one here, and all the rest of them as well are dinosaurs that you should really be trying to get into your park if you can. So up next here is actually one of my personal favorite dinosaurs to use in this game, and I was really happy when I seen that it had some really good appeal. So 4,048 total appeal is the Dinosaurs. This thing, if you haven't used it, you're really missing out. You got to use this thing. Not only is it got really good appeal for the space, it's not super expensive, and the face on these things is just kind of funky. It's kind of funny to look at. I don't know. So now we're up to the number 2 dinosaur on the list, and at 4,590 total appeal in this one enclosure, we have the Metriacanthosaurus. This is one that a lot of times people overlook. Now I realize that I didn't quite get the comfort to 100%, so really we could lower this total rating down to 4,000 if we wanted to make it fair, but either way it would still be in a solid second place. Alright, and at the number 1 spot, you guys might be surprised on this one. At 5,751 total rating in this one enclosure, we have the Suchomimus. Who would have guessed? So the Suchomimus, I started to have a hunch that this thing was going to be really good when I used it during my Northwest US Jurassic difficulty playthrough, and I really regret not using this thing earlier. This thing is an absolute beast. You can fit so many of them in an enclosure, and the thing that's also really impressive about this thing is that you can actually get a baryonyx in with this too. So not only would you have the rating from the Suchomimus, you can also get a baryonyx in here, and they cohabitate perfectly fine. I had baryonyx and Suchomimus in an enclosure together for a really long time, and they never fought. So unlike other carnivores that I've found, these actually won't fight with the baryonyx. So you can get 2 species in a single enclosure, and they are just absolute appeal animals. So this is definitely my highest recommended dinosaur. If you have this available, especially on like a challenge mode playthrough, I highly recommend you using this dinosaur. So just as a bonus here at the end, I kind of wanted to compare and see if I could get a really good herbivore enclosure to compare it to a really good carnivore enclosure. And the herbivore enclosure I came up with here is 20 Nigerosaurus, 8 Kentrosaurus, and 7 Alorotitans. I was able to get all of those in one of these enclosures that I used for the carnivore testing. And those came out to a total rating of 5,509. So if you're looking for a really good herbivore enclosure to use, I would recommend using these 3 dinosaurs together. So there you have it, guys. There's the results that I have gotten so far from my testing. Now, obviously, I've just tested some of the carnivores. I haven't tested all of them. If you guys would like to see me test more dinosaurs, let me know down in the comments like which dinosaurs you want to see me do this test with, and I'll be happy to go through and make a second video and test all of those. Now, speaking of second videos, something that I do plan on doing is I'm going to go through and test the aquatics, because I have this theory that the aquatics are just absolutely not worth using, and I want to test that theory using this exact method. And on top of that, I have another video in mind. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to take a look at each of these dinosaurs more in depth in a separate video, and we're going to look and see if they're worth it when you start to factor in money as well. So obviously this video was directed more towards if you have money, but you just don't quite have the space to use everything you want to use, and you're struggling to get that 5th star, and you need more appeal. This is what dinosaurs you need to use, is the ones that I showed here in this video. These are the ones that are going to give you the best appeal for your space. So I hope you guys found this video interesting and maybe even helpful when picking which dinosaurs to use. I definitely look forward to going back through challenge mode again and testing some of these out now that we know which ones work really well. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching today. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you guys in the next videos that'll be coming out very soon. Until then, have a good day, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.